Okay, so if you look at beyond the main motion and the amendment, there's a number of other motions or tactics that Robert's Rules allows you to use during your meeting to dispose of your action items or to dispose of your main motions. So all of these will be things that you tend to do with main motions once they've been put onto the floor for discussion. One of the most common ones that you hear is the motion to table, which essentially is allow your group to set something on the table or set it aside for a small amount of time because something more important or more pressing has come up. One of the great examples of it is if you're having your Senate meeting and all of a sudden your college president or someone else shows up and they want to speak to your group. Well, you're right in the middle of a huge debate. It might take an hour. It might take 2 hours for you to get this done. You simply make a motion to table, and as long as enough people agree with it, you can set that issue aside, allow the guest speaker to speak, remove it from the table, and continue right where you were. The motion to postpone is also another motion that does a similar thing, although there's a couple different kinds of postponement motions. One is to postpone something definitely, which sets a time for when it will return, another meeting, 2 meetings down the line, whatever the case might be. A motion to postpone indefinitely basically makes the motion go away until someone actually takes action to bring it back. And so the postpone definitely sets a time. The postpone indefinitely just says it's not coming back until somebody says it's coming back, and then you have to vote for it. And so, there's different reasons to use those, but they can be used. On the motion to recess, basically it's called, I kind of call it the take a break motion. It can be used for any number of different reasons, but the most common ones will be because people just need a break, or it'll allow you to, caucus or to meet with people who, to work on an amendment or to, a caucus to try to get them to come to your side or, so that type of stuff for some lobbying to go on. The motion to adjourn usually, most commonly, is almost always used at the end of a meeting when there's nothing left to do, but at times it can be used, when a meeting starts to get running away from you and you start to run out of time, whatever the case might be. And the motion to adjourn is actually the highest ranking motion in Robert's Rules and is always in order. So anytime someone makes a motion to adjourn, it's in order. Then you have to decide whether you're going to end the meeting immediately. Some other ones that you'll hear a lot, previous question, move to the previous question. This is a very popular one that gets used a lot to sort of immediately end debate on an issue and move directly to a vote. Now, because it gets used so often, it also gets used incorrectly very often. You might also hear this motion called the call the question motion, but the previous question basically ends debate, moves you directly to a vote. Now, because it fundamentally limits people's right to debate, it takes 2/3 to agree to move to the previous question, but there's also certain limitations. You can't get up, debate on an issue, be the first person to debate it, and then move the previous question. You have to allow 2 people to speak. Second, you can't get up, do your debate, and then at the end of your debate call the previous question, because you're essentially saying, I'm done now, so no one else gets to talk. That's not a proper use of the motion. So it has to be the first thing you do, and it has to be after 2 people have spoken on the given topic. So you can't just bring a motion to the floor, have somebody stand up, call the previous question, and vote it. You have to give the minority opinion on the issue, or the people who might be against it, or the people who might be for it, the opportunity to play their case, and maybe they can swing enough people to their side. The point of order, something used to inquire with the chair whether the rules are being followed. If you believe something has happened that's improper by the rules, you make a point of order, you sort it out, you figure it out, and go from there. The point of information is used to ask a question relating to the business. It's not meant to be debate, and it's not meant to be, something like the room is too hot or the room is too cold or I can't hear. That's a point of personal privilege. The point of information is meant to, hey, did you say 10 billion or did you say 10 million if the speaker was talking and you couldn't understand them, or if you want to clarify a point within the discussion. So, the point of order is used to sort of check on whether the process and the rules are being followed. The point of information is being used to ask a question specifically about the business, and then which is not on the slide, but the point of personal privilege is the one where if the room is too hot, or for some reason you need a break, you need to step out of the room, whatever the case might be. The division motion is a request by any member to clarify the results of a voice vote. I know most student senates do all their votes by voice unless there's a roll call or something like that. And so if you're a member of the group and you believe that there were more people who voted yes, but that the no's just yelled louder, that would be the appropriate time to use a division, would be a hand raise or something like that. The motion to reconsider is one of those where it allows your group to reconsider an action from the previous meeting. Once you go past a meeting, past where it happened, you can't reconsider anymore. But it allows you to go back because either new information was brought forward or there's something different. Now you want to reconsider an action that you took. It requires 2/3 to do it. The person making the motion to reconsider has to have voted on the prevailing side. In other words, if you voted no on something and it passed, you can't just try to reconsider it because there's nothing new. But if someone who voted yes decides, I made a mistake, I'd like to reconsider that, that's the major portion of it. So finally, some crucial things for everybody who's a member of your Senate or who might attend your meetings to remember. You always have the right to know what is going on. And that may seem sort of simple and may seem sort of weird to say, but Robert's rules can be very confusing when they get to be used too strictly. And so you always have the right to ask the question as to what's going on. You always have the right to know what your vote means. And that also could seem a little bit strange. But when you think about some of the motions in Robert's rules, sometimes a yes vote might mean a no, and a no vote might mean a yes. So if you have any clarification or any doubt about what you're voting on, you always have the right to know that. You have the responsibility to follow the rules as best you can. In other words, if you know something is against the rules but you think you can get away with it, you don't do it because that's not the way meetings are supposed to be run. That's not how it's supposed to be done. Not respectful to everybody else. You follow the rules as best you can, and you try to hold people accountable when they step outside of the rules. And I think finally the most important one for everybody to remember is that you only enforce the rules as strictly as you need in order to get your work done. Robert's rules in the book actually talks about the fact that you don't need to run your meetings by the strictest interpretation of the rules if it actually would inhibit your business from being done appropriately. And so if you're in a very informal meeting where you have 10 or 15 people and you can run it sort of by consensus, or you can run it very openly and let people have their say without being too restrictive and too nitpicky with the rules, that's the best way to do it. However, if you get into larger meetings such as maybe a GA at MSCSA or something like that, where you have 250 people, you have to use the rules to keep order. 250 people debating without rules would be a nightmare. So if you remember only enforce the rules as strictly as you need to get the work done, you're going to be a step ahead.